In this class we're going to look at features of a business research report. Now this is just one very short class in a whole series of short classes, all of which go to make up the features of a business research report. All of the classes are very straightforward and all of them are short. So it's a whole series of classes all in the under this heading, all in this area. Now we'll start by just mentioning here the methodology. Well, the methodology for a project of this nature may include the points that we've got on that list. So it may include something about the sampling design, about the research design itself, how the data is collected, how the data is analysed, the limitations of the exercise, how the data was collected and analysed, may be criticised, there may be issues and problems. What are the findings, and out of the findings what conclusions and recommendations may be drawn, the appendices and bibliography. Now I say at the very bottom here, each of these sections will be looked at in turn, and that's exactly what happens over this series of classes. So you will see a whole series of short classes covering different aspects to the business research report. So we're going to start by looking at, in this class, the sampling design. Now as I said, it's a short class and very straightforward, but in this case the researcher defines the target population and the sampling methods to be used. So the target population is identified and the sampling method to be used is also selected. The target population could be customers buying a particular product or customers living in a particular area. So the target population must be clearly defined. And then what sampling methods will be used? How will the customers be contacted? How will information be derived from the customers? How will the data be collected and how will it be analysed, turning it into information? So the sampling design contains necessary information such as types of sampling, for example probability or non-probability to be used. So how will the sample be drawn? Will it be selected randomly or quasi-randomly, or will it be non-probability? Will it be based on snowball sampling or some easy way of collecting the data? And how reliable will the information be collected from data of that nature? So what type of sampling? And each of the sampling methods has its own strengths and weaknesses. So depends on what information is required. It depends on the importance of the information as well. Now the types of probability sampling, for example simple random or complex random, or non-probability sampling, quota sampling or snowball sampling to be used. So as I said earlier, it really depends on the nature of the inquiry. It depends on how important the information is. It depends on the resources available. It depends on training for staff. It depends on the time scale for the exercise. It depends on many factors. But the sampling design should be set out and should be discussed clearly in this section. The factors that determine the sample size and selection of the sampling elements should also be discussed here. How big should the sample be? Should it be 30, 50, 10? It depends. Depends on how precise the information is to be. How reliable is the information in terms of its indication of what the population is like. So the sample size should be discussed in this section and it should be calculated if possible. And what levels of confidence and margin of acceptable error is agreed. If it is based on a sample, then what confidence interval should be acceptable? Is it 95%? Is it 99%? Is it 68%? What confidence interval is desired? So if they want to predict the mean, for example, then if the standard deviation of the sample is collected and it's multiplied by a factor, let's say 1.96, then 95% is 95% chance that the population mean will lie in that range, plus or minus the standard error. But it depends, and these topics are really considered in other classes in this area. So I won't go into them here and now. So what we've got here on the slide is the essentials of the sampling design technique. Should it be probability sampling or non-probability sampling? If it is probability sampling, what sort of probability sampling? Simple random sampling, complex random, quota sampling, sequential sampling? How should it be done? If it's non-probability, how should that be done as well? Is it snowball sampling, for example? What are the issues of bias and reliability? And how are they to be dealt with? And the factors that determine the sample size should be looked at in detail. The levels of confidence and the margin of acceptable error should also be discussed, particularly if it is a probability sampling methodology that's selected. And as I said, if you like, the background to a lot of these terms and points are discussed in other videos in this set of classes. So look to those for a clear understanding of what's meant by, for example, levels of confidence, margin of acceptable error, snowball sampling, and so on. These are discussed elsewhere. So with that in mind, that's all we need to do with sampling design. So let's leave it at that, and thank you for watching.